So a few months back, we talked about a BookTok related event going haywire. It was a massive disappointment to all the attendees. They ended up calling it a scam. People showed up to this hotel conference room and expected, you know, book signings and merchandise and mood lighting and a Bridgerton ball. And it was nothing of the sort. It was basically the Willy Wonka AI scam all over again, but make it BookTok. That was bad enough. And the clientele for such an event, you can probably guess who it attracts. Just some of the most chronically online, morbidly obese, ugly inside and out people you can imagine. But this event that was just put on a couple of weeks ago is even worse by every metric. It was a couple of weeks back, and I can't believe that this isn't getting mainstream coverage.
Why do you think that the mainstream would cover it? I actually completely can believe this.
Because the previous BookTok event got a lot of coverage in mainstream publications, being called like the Fire Festival of BookTok.
Yeah, because it was about a scam, not about groping.
But this is the reason why I cannot believe it's not getting covered, is because it's so much worse. So the attendees at this BookTok event called Sinners and Stardust were expected to show up for meeting these authors they like, book signings, selfies, dressing up in costumes, and the main event was this big dark romance ball. So the difference between the previous BookTok event and this one is specifically catered to women who like the genre of dark romance, which essentially
Morning Glory Milking Farm.
It's Morning Glory Milking Farm, that type of genre where it's all about sexual violence, morally gray love interests, which just means villains, criminals, violence, forced breeding, bestiality, all of the above.
Sounds like a fun group of ladies.
The sickest stuff that you can imagine. Probably worse than Morning Glory Milking Farm. So Sinners and Stardust was organized by a group that calls themselves the Dark Collective. You can actually find pictures of these women in the Dark Collective on the website. They identify themselves under monikers like Owner Extraordinaire Nighthawk, Digital Operations Coordinator Resident Cinnamon Roll, and Bodacious Beauty Babe and Chaos Conductor. No real names are provided. They are preferring anonymity and pseudonyms among the core team. And it's possibly because of the liability that's presented by what happened at this event.
I mean, like if they want to, if a private investigator or law enforcement wants to find you, they're going to find you.
And that might happen.
These people are not Jason Bourne.
We have a 20 from Gravel AMDG. I've been watching since before episode 100, but I still don't get why you guys say the show starts after cringe/cute of the day, like the stories beforehand were somehow not part of the show. I don't get it. What's the difference? We basically do that just because the stories that we do before cringe and cute of the day are ones that require less runtime.
Smaller stories. Also, more people file in to watch.
Yeah.
So it's if we start right away and we go right at topic number 1 at like 0.00 minutes, then people are still filing in. Not everybody has a chance to be here for it. We've considered moving those things around, but I like breaking up those kind of lighter stories or smaller stories at the start of the show before we get into the main topics.
So anyway, what happened at Sinners and Stardust is that
I'm
attendees...
sorry, but it's the worst name I've ever heard. It's the most quintessential, like, BookTok name I've ever heard for an event.
Well, yeah, but this is what the clientele was coming to get. One of the features of this party that they threw for their attendees was they would have roaming actors. These are basically male models. They're all shirtless and they're wearing masks, and they're all like basically walking around on stilts to look like they're 7-8 feet tall. And they have been hired to take photos with the attendees, like the ones you're about to see.
Love this. Check it out.
If you're gonna...
Sorry, I'm not getting a
Choking the attendees for photos, okay? And one of them is wearing a shirt that says, "No safe words." Yeah. None of this is about literature. And essentially what happened is some of the bad apples attending the event groped these men who were hired to perform essentially as actors. And one of them allegedly attached an AirTag location tracking device to one of the male actors. This is mainly getting attention on X and TikTok. They had a dark romance BookTok convention and everybody got sexually assaulted. I'm watching a video and the lady is like, we didn't think it would happen here because books make you more empathetic. It's not funny, but oh dear. Apparently one of the few men there was sexually assaulted by multiple women, made to describe against his will how he would hypothetically kidnap a woman in real life, as men do in dark romance novels. And at least one woman tried to stalk him by sneaking an AirTag onto his person. Some fans harassed and assaulted the authors. In response, the convention banned full face masks. They no longer have roaming entertainers, and fans won't be able to freely access authors, vendors, influencers who will have security details and special zones that fans can't enter because these people are so unhinged. And Sinners in Stardust has now issued a response to this major PR disaster on Instagram, saying, we're grateful to every single one of you who joined us, those who respected the heart of this community by asking for consent and honoring personal space. Our mission has always been to create something rare, a space where the dark romance community can feel safe, celebrated, and free to share their love of the stories that move us most. We need to be absolutely clear. Safety, security, and consent are not just values, they are non-negotiable. No is a complete sentence. Our authors, narrators, vendors, influencers, artists, and guests are not just names on a book cover or faces on a screen. They are people, human beings, who deserve the same dignity, safety, respect as every attendee. They give their time, talent, and energy to this community, and in return, we expect every person in attendance to treat them with the respect they deserve. Moving forward, the following changes will be in place at all Sinners and Stardust events. Attendees are no longer allowed to wear full face masks to any part of our event. No exceptions. Entertainment will continue, but roaming, interactive, and entertainers will no longer be a part of the ball. Safety. Authors, narrators, vendors, their assistants, influencers, and guests will now have a secure, dedicated area with their own security. They may move freely between areas, but attendees are not permitted in their area under any circumstances. If an attendee is caught trying to go into their space, they will be immediately removed and banned from future events. We are decreasing the number of tickets available to ensure a more comfortable, safe, and respectful experience. These rules are not suggestions, they are expectations. Violations, including harassment, non-consensual touching, photos taken without permission, invasive questions, or any behavior that makes others feel unsafe will result in immediate removal and a permanent ban from all future hosted events. These events thrive because of passion, creativity, and community, but community cannot exist without respect. Every attendee has a responsibility to uphold these standards. To anyone affected this weekend negatively, from the bottom of our hearts, we are truly sorry and will work harder to gain your trust back as a safe and inclusive event. To everyone who respected boundaries, we're truly grateful. Your care makes the difference, and we can't wait to welcome you to future events. This wasn't enough, though. They were still getting loads of backlash after this, rightfully so. So they followed up with more safety protocols in a different post. To the Sinners in Stardust community, we want to remain mindful of those who were impacted by continuing to improve and prioritize safety for everyone. We remain steadfast in our commitment to making all events a safe, respectful, and inclusive environment for all who attend. This work is ongoing. We will continue to share updates regarding additional safety measures and protocols being implemented, as well as reminders about our code of conduct and policies. Signage at each table to clearly indicate authors and vendors' comfort levels regarding photos, hugs, or physical contact, with the reminder to always ask first. That's just basic etiquette for all functioning adults in society. They will have glow-in-the-dark wristbands specifically for the fantasy ball to make consent indicators visible in low-light settings. Venue-wide signage reminding everyone of the mandatory consent policy. QR codes placed throughout the event linking directly to the security, providing a discreet way to report concerns and ask for immediate help.
There's a 20 there.
Let me
Corey
see.
Anderson.
I don't have this up here. Oh. Who would have thought that women that never have been held accountable for their actions would act so disgusting at a freak sex book show? Shocked Pikachu face. Yeah. So the most ridiculous response to this scandal thus far is from a member of the dark romance community that wrote an op-ed about this situation, claiming that the misconduct that occurred at this event has nothing whatsoever to do with the genre that it's related to, which is entirely centered around sexual violence. Like, that's just what it is. You can dress it up in whatever buzzwords you want. But they said, exploring the Sinners in Stardust controversy, the truth about dark romance and why predators, not books, are to blame for assault. And they said, allegations of sexual assault surfaced online. Understandably, shock and outrage rippled across the BookTok community. As discourse unfolded, some were quick to blame the genre itself, suggesting that dark romance fiction somehow fosters dangerous real-world behavior. But that argument doesn't hold up. To understand why, we need to unpack what dark romance really is, what the Sinners in Stardust ball was meant to be, and why predators bear responsibility when boundaries are crossed.
Well, I mean, is the argument that they're making that, you know, predators find their way to communities that give them access?
That was one of the arguments provided, yes. However, if we're being honest, this is a porn convention for women. If there were a convention for men who watch and are aroused by sexual violence and pornography on video, I would be entirely unsurprised if they were groping and non-consensually touching female adult performers at such events. Because you're attracting the clientele that has taken in so much of this media that it warps their perception of the real world. And they will still claim that the porn they consume has no correlation whatsoever to do with their personal desires or their real life or what they're actually attracted to. That is a bald-faced lie.
Well, that's what she's saying in this article, right?
Yeah. She explains dark romance is not a typical love story. Unlike light romances where conflicts are easily resolved, dark romance dives into taboo themes, morally gray characters, and psychological intensity. Readers are drawn to the emotional roller coaster where danger and desire collide. So they mention morally ambiguous or villainous love interests, power imbalances, high emotional and physical stakes, trauma, revenge, violence, and raw vulnerability, a bittersweet but satisfying resolution. The appeal lies in the safe exploration of danger. Just as horror fans enjoy the adrenaline of fear without risk, dark romance readers enjoy stepping into fictional worlds where passion and peril entwine, without it reflecting their personal desires or condoning harmful behavior. If you really want to tell me that the women reading these so-called romance novels have zero actual desire for the dynamics that they portray, you're delulu.
She threw it in there with the condoning part, which is like, those are two very different things. Like, yes, I do find it hard to believe that they don't also have those desires, but I do believe that they don't condone those actions. But those two shouldn't be placed right next to each other as if they're the same thing.
Correct. I believe that the piece Evie Magazine published about the rise of BookTok and dark romance is correct in asserting that this is essentially a loophole for mainly women who purport to be feminists, who purport to believe in egalitarian relationship dynamics. They're against traditional gender roles.
They're the people criticizing Nara Smith.
Exactly. Like a lot of the same people with the same worldviews and ideologies, but they found this pornographic loophole to sublimate their desires for actually masculine men. And because they pathologize actual masculinity, the only way that they deem it acceptable is in a fictional world where it's mythical creatures like minotaurs. And this is why it does, in fact, reflect their actual desires.
Do you think they would actually, do you think that politicization that they have of it is so bad that they wouldn't even allow it to happen with human characters in movies? Like, would they be okay with problematic male, what they would deem problematic male characters in movies who, exhibit traditional masculinity?
Well, if the success of the 50 Shades of Grey franchise is anything to go off of.
It's one of the things it's really funny they mentioned that in Peacemaker, where the NSA psychologist is interviewing Harcourt and says, "You exhibit a particularly virulent style of toxic masculinity," and she starts just berating him and yelling at him, and he lists all of the reasons, all of the signs of toxic masculinity, which are just her to a T, and she's like, "But I have a vagina." So, I would 100% believe that, the books are an outlet for them in this respect. I don't like the correlation they made there about, somehow they're saying it's not only do they not feel that way, but they wouldn't condone it either. I do believe that they wouldn't condone it, the bad behavior. I do believe they feel that way.
Oh, but they would readily sneer at and denigrate men,
yes,
who are into violent pornography,
yes,
which similarly is fictional, at least you would hope. And they would be right, actually, to find it disturbing that a man is aroused by the idea of abusing a woman.
Thank you.
But for them, it's okay.
Thank you, guys.
It's an obvious double standard. Thank you. So the crux of the argument says correlation doesn't equal causation. The event centered around dark romance. Allegations of assault occurred at the event, but that doesn't mean dark romance caused the assaults. No one is saying that the books caused the assaults. They're saying the people who are attracted to this form of literature, if you want to call it that, are deranged. And they're more likely than the rest of the population to behave inappropriately because they are deranged and detached from reality. That was the argument. They're just straw manning the way that people are talking about this event because they are desperate to defend the sick stuff that they get off to.
She's like, "Look, anybody could end up with an AirTag in their bag. Are you kidding me? Like, what's the problem?"
Yeah, and they say it's the same flawed logic used to blame violent video games for school shootings. Correlation is coincidence. Causation is proof. There's no evidence that reading or writing dark romance predisposes someone to assault others.
Well, I mean, the whole thing back in the video game debate days was obviously that, there was plenty of people who were not exactly steel manning the argument and saying, calling for more government regulation, whatever that would have looked like in the 90s, over video games without being willing to look into what was the home life like for this person. Did they have a stable upbringing? Did they have two parents in their household teaching them not to be a psychopath? There was whenever these topics come up, they are so fantastical that they always get boiled down to the lowest common denominator, and the nuance tends to get lost.
It's also not a one-to-one comparison because
not.
If there were a convention called the Violent Video Game Convention, I might assume that the attendees at such an event are more predisposed to violence than the rest of the population.
I would not.
That it's called the Violent Video Game Convention?
Based on the name alone, I suppose.
Okay.
Actually, I would think it was more...
Then that's what we're talking about.
I would think it's mimetic more than anything.
Because this is women who are aroused by the idea of getting R-worded by a Minotaur event. That's what this is. So yes, they are more likely to be sexual deviants that don't have any concept of what is acceptable in human etiquette.
But if I went to a first-person shooter video game convention, I wouldn't assume that the people there are more likely to shoot me. And that would be the actual name of it. If we were to go by genre, and we're not straw manning the argument, if it was called the first person shooter con, I'm not going to assume that the person there is going to go insane.
Well, here's another reason why it's not a one-to-one comparison, because of the element of sexuality.
Yeah.
And
And there wouldn't be like hired shooters going around the convention.
If I had an inkling that I were interacting with a man who is aroused by the idea of abusing women, I would not want to be alone in a room with a man like that.
Yeah.
And I would be right to take precautions against that. Yeah. These are those same women, like in the corollary for the opposite sex. They also like mention comparisons to the kink community, and they have their own conventions for people who are into so-called consensual non-consent kinks. And
meaning like no means yes.
They were talking about the role play aspect of it. They say outsiders may misunderstand these dynamics, but insiders know one truth: consent is the foundation. Even if someone agrees to a consensual non-consent scene, they do so within carefully defined boundaries. Safe words and signals exist to ensure the ability to stop. Aftercare helps participants process the emotional intensity of roleplay. In other words, even when no is part of the fantasy, yes is the reality. What's funny is that at this actual event, the actors were hired to wear no safe words t-shirts, which is literally implying that the implication of consent doesn't matter.
I mean, that's like their version of like edgy. Like that's supposed to be edgy to them.
If there were a convention dedicated to people who are into consensual non-consent, would I assume there is a higher propensity toward non-consensual sexual actions at that event? Yes. Would I assume that people going to an event like that are at a greater risk by far of getting R-worded? Yes. Yeah. Because the people who are attracted to that type of thing are not merely interested in role play.
And that's not what happened at this convention. It was just the hired male actors who got air tagged, right? And
the primary misunderstanding they have is that you can divorce your sexual proclivities from all other facets of your life. That is not how the human brain works. That is not how dopamine receptors work. If you are aroused by sexual violence, that does affect the rest of your interactions with other people. It's not just something you can silo off into this one private part of your life, and it's not going to affect the rest of the way that you interact with other people. And that's kind of a schizophrenic way of viewing human nature and sexuality in general. Like, the sexual faculty in human nature is the most powerful thing, which is why arguments about sexuality and gender are at such a fever pitch right now. Like, it's the easiest way to get people triggered is talking about anything related to sexuality or gender. And that's for a reason. It's the most fundamental part of the human experience. Like, it's the most visceral human experience that exists is sexual intercourse. So I don't believe you can just have a certain sexual hobby that has nothing to do with your waking life. You're not sleepwalking when you go to the dark romance ball.
She's like, and then I wake up and I go to my job as an HR manager.
Yeah, that's probably true, actually. Yeah. They all have like the fake laptop jobs, and they don't tell their coworkers about this. But
like
this is the push to make it socially acceptable.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.